I think at this point it's safe to say Dillon Brooks really messed up. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Sterling from ENT. Welcome back to ENT Basketball. Before we get into the video, make sure you guys go down below, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and now let's get right into the video. So the Memphis Grizzlies have informed Dillon Brooks that under no circumstances whatsoever will Dillon Brooks be back on the team next year. And as long as I've been watching sports, I've never seen a player get treated like this by an organization. This is a complete embarrassing way for Dillon Brooks to go out. But the thing is that he kind of brought it upon himself. This entire year, we've been seeing nothing but Dillon Brooks talking to the media, talking crap, disrespecting other players, talking about how he's not going to respect LeBron until he gives him 40, talking about how the Memphis Grizzlies are the next dynasty. And then after all that talk, when they finally took the L, he was silent and skipped his media obligations. Like I said, I've never seen a player get treated like this on the way out. But what I think this is I think this is the Memphis Grizzlies. I think this is their way of putting an end to all this nonsense. We've heard countless stories coming out of the Memphis Grizzlies organization from a lot of their players on their team. Obviously, there's all the Dillon Brooks situations that I just mentioned, but there's also a lot of Ja Morant situations. Obviously, there was the whole IG Live situation. You know what IG Live I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into it. There's been countless stories about how Ja Morant has had altercations with high schoolers at basketball games. There was the whole laser beam situation with the Indiana Pacers. And over the last year, there's just been a lot of negative stories coming out of the Grizzlies organization. And I think this is the Grizzlies' way of kind of just saying, you know, we're going to put this out there that under no circumstances is Dillon Brooks coming back next year. And I think they're going to use this point to kind of just put this year behind them with all the talking that they did. And I have seen the term scapegoat being thrown around for Dillon Brooks, saying that the Grizzlies sort of scapegoated Dillon Brooks in this situation. To a certain extent, I agree. But the reality of the situation is that Dillon Brooks talked way too much and didn't back any of it up. And on the actual court, he was an actual detriment, specifically in the playoffs. He was super inefficient in the playoffs. He shot the ball terrible. Although he is impactful on the defensive end, I'm going to admit he's great on the defensive end. He's a pest. He's a player that's going to guard the other team's best player and make it hard for them on a night-to-night basis, just based on how hard he plays and how much of a hustle player he is. But on the offensive side of the ball, the entire playoff series against the Lakers, he was a complete liability. And after he did all that talking, it was just not a good look at all. I disagree that he's being scapegoated because he was just so much of a detriment on the actual court, and he was causing too much chaos, I guess you can call it, off the court. And then another thing about Dillon Brooks is that he's had comments saying that he wants to have a bigger role on a team. And I've seen a lot of people sort of defending these comments by Dillon Brooks, saying that he's looking at Mikal Bridges and how he was sort of a 3-and-D type player, moved teams into a new situation, and now he's able to really spread his wings and be who he truly is. And ever since the trade to Brooklyn, Mikal Bridges has looked really good in an expanded role. But the main difference between those two situations is that when Mikal Bridges was on the Suns, he was super efficient. He had like near 50, 40, 90 seasons, a few seasons in a row. He shot the three ball really efficiently, and he was able to really play off of the Suns' best players. Dillon Brooks is the exact opposite. Dillon Brooks inserts himself on the offensive end too much. He's not a good three-point shooter. He's not a good offensive player really at all. So Dillon Brooks moving to another team and flourishing and spreading his wings is just not a realistic thing. And so that begs the question. Obviously, we've seen the joke out there tons of times at this point that Dillon Brooks is going to be playing in Taiwan next year, or he's going to be on the Shanghai Sharks or whatever. It's fun to make jokes like that, I understand. But it begs the question, is Dillon Brooks going to be in the league next season? My answer to that question is yes. I do think Dillon Brooks is going to be in the league next season. But what Dillon Brooks needs to do is he needs to look himself in the mirror and kind of just realize that all that talking he was doing really just put himself in a bad situation like we're seeing right now. He just got embarrassed by the organization that he was putting his blood, sweat, and tears into. Every night he was going out there battling for and with the Memphis Grizzlies, and they just disrespected him on the way out. And that's because of how he condoned himself. So what I think Dillon Brooks should do is, number one, he needs to keep his mouth shut. He needs to keep his mouth shut. Don't talk crap about other players. Don't say anything that you can't back up. Just kind of be cool, be low key, just play basketball, dude. Like, you don't have to be doing all this extra stuff. Because if he then does that, he's going to be one of those grit and grind type players that almost every team wants. A lot of teams would love to have a hustle player who's going to give his all on the defensive end every single night. The type of guy who's going to guard the other team's best player and really make it hard for them. The type of guy who's going to dive on the floor for balls. The type of guy who's going to have all of his teammates back every single night. Every team would love to have a guy like that. It's just that when you're doing all this off the court antics and extra stuff, there's too much baggage there. And I'm not saying that you can't talk. A perfect example is Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley is a guy who's going to talk, but he's not going to talk in a disrespectful manner. He's not going to be saying he doesn't respect somebody. If anything, Patrick Beverley's going to be like, I really respect this player. He has a really good game. He's one of the best, blah, blah, blah. But, I trust my abilities. I'm always going to go out there and give my all every single night, no matter who I'm going up against. And there's a completely different situation from saying something like that to saying, I don't respect somebody until they give me 40. Because at that point, you're just giving them extra motivation. And if they do go off against you, then you're just putting yourself in a bad spot. And at that point, it's kind of a lose-lose situation. And so, yes, I do think Dillon Brooks is going to get picked up by a team next year. What team? That's a good question. The number one team that comes to mind, in my opinion, is the Houston Rockets. Obviously, the Houston Rockets have a really young team right now, but they just hired Ime Udoka a few days ago, and in his press conference, he was talking about how this team doesn't have plans on losing anymore. They're trying to maybe get some veterans and start making progress towards making the playoffs. And although I kind of don't agree with rushing their process, they don't have their first round pick next year. So them continuing to sort of build up a veteran presence and trying to move more towards winning, I do think it's sort of a good idea because, like I said, you don't have your draft picks. And the amount of contenders that Dillon Brooks would be able to go to is not that high. And the Rockets are probably going to try and get some free agents on their team, a more veteran presence to establish something better. And so I do think Dillon Brooks could end up on that team. And I think there probably are a couple other teams that would like to have a guy like Dillon Brooks if he would just kind of quiet his mouth a little bit. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for today's video. Make sure you guys go down below, hit the like button, subscribe to ENT Basketball, and go down below and comment if you think Dillon Brooks is going to be in the NBA next year. And if so, comment what team. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out of here.